Today I want to talk about showing form in a head, and I want to talk about finding the right values to show shape and form, to find the right color to suggest the light, and then to also talk about brushwork to suggest texture as well. So here's the model we're going to be using. Now it's a goat. This is our daughter's newest goat, Captain Jack. And what I want to show again is how the light hits the head, using the values to show form, colors to suggest what type of light it is, cool in the shadows, warm in the light areas, and combination of both warm and cool in kind of the halftones. And then brushwork, how to suggest the texture of the fur and hard and soft edges, which also goes a long way to show the form. So here is the board. I'm painting on a piece of masonite, gessoed masonite, and toned it with burnt sienna and did the drawing with burnt sienna. And my drawing, I want to keep big and simple. It always helps me to draw the subject in very big and loose. So I will kind of quickly, even if it's kind of like a gesture or a scribble, just put the brush down, don't pick it up too much. Get an oval shape there, an elongated oval for the ear, kind of a cylinder for the neck, and doesn't have to be real dark. Then I will go back and refine it. What I don't want to do is start with one single line, like right up here, and be very careful to follow it exactly. Because then all I'm looking at is the outside edge. And there's just no way to get the proportions right that way. You have to see the whole thing, kind of like the volume of the shape, all at once, and get that in first, then go back and refine it with an outline. So be careful not to go to a contour or a careful contour or outline too fast. Get a shape in there that places everything. Then you can go back and refine it a little bit. Sometimes you can use charcoal first. I wouldn't use pencil. The smaller the object you use, the more detailed you're going to want to be. So I tend to draw with a bigger brush, and again, keep it real simple. Just placement for the eye, placement for the ear, and basic shape for the head. Then I go to the background, and in the background I wanted a value that made the head stick out. So I went with a middle value. That way the darks in the goat won't blend into the background and the whites won't blend in. If I go too dark in the background, if I go really dark, then I'll lose my shadows. They'll sink into the background. And if I go too light, I'll lose my light areas. They'll sink into the background. So a middle value allows both the light and the dark to stand out. And that's what I want. And I used ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. You can see it down here. It's a muted bluish green. And then I came back in with some deoxazine purple, a little bit lighter, and drug it around to cool off the background a bit more. But the value of it is what's important here. It's a middle value to allow both darks and lights to stand out. And then the shadow I started in here is burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, and ultramarine blue. The alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue are a bit too strong of a violet, so the burnt sienna kind of mutes it, kind of modifies it. I didn't want to use black. We look at the photograph and you can say, well, it's just black. Why not use ivory black? But when you have a real dark like that, if you want to use a color so that when you look into the shadow, there's some sense of a local color there. Now, the photograph did not pick it up at all. But even though it's black fur, there is a warmth to it when you look into the shadow. So the burnt sienna, crimson, and a little bit of blue gave me a value just as dark, but it had a color to it, and that's what you want. I could use ivory black, but if I did, I would make a very muted violet. I would use ivory black and alizarin crimson or burnt sienna so that it does have a color and a bit of a warmth to it. So here I've finished off the shadow pattern, being very careful to really get that shadow pattern in there, which means simplifying the drawing a lot more, forcing all the shadow into the shadow pattern, and get rid of the little lights and little darks. Just big, simple pattern. Makes it so much easier to decide on values, color, and then brushwork. So simplify things. Here's my background color, ultramarine blue and ochre with a little bit of violet. I kind of scrubbed in. Here's the dark fur, burnt sienna, crimson, and blue. Has a bit of a warmth to it. And then here's the light shadowed fur, which is kind of a violet, this dioxazine purple with white added to it, and a little bit of orange. So it's a warm violet. It's the color of the black fur with sunlight on it. And that's what I'm adding here. And the lighter it gets, the thicker it is. So you can see it's real thick there and there, and because it gets lighter there, so I'm just building up the thickness. And here kind of solidifying. I've got another value in here. It's just this color, but just a little white added to it. Same thing in here. It's just slightly lighter, but I still basically have just these two values, the shadow of the black fur and the light area of the black fur. A little bit of variation color-wise. Now I'm adding the white fur, and the lightest on the bridge of the nose and top of the head is white and yellow ochre. And then from here down, it's a bit darker. I don't know if it's a shadow, but it's at least a darker halftone. And that is white with a bit more yellow ochre and a little bit of violet. So it gives me a slightly darker white on the nose there. And underneath the chin, a lot darker. And adding some highlights on the ears here. Again, the highlights are thicker yet, so I have to go, or the highlights are lighter, so I have to go a bit thicker to show them lighter. Same thing in here. Just getting a bit lighter to show those highlights on there. Still trying to keep this definite shadow pattern as I move along. If I lose that, then I lose the form. So find that shadow pattern initially and then keep it throughout the whole painting. And here's the colors I used in the white. You can see down below underneath was the white and ochre. It's the white ochre with a little bit of violet. And here now I'm using, or I'm thinking about brushwork, some texture here, which means pushing and pulling the brush strokes to create harder, softer edges, a variety of hard and soft edges. Also where I want one color to move into another, like right in here, just pulling the light fur down into the shadow. And I use a bright. Flat would work too, but a bright is a little bit wider, not as long, but a little bit wider, and it's a synthetic brush. Any synthetic bright brush or flat, it gives you that straight edge that you can kind of push and pull with in there. So where the form turns around like that, I want a softer edge, and where it's a bit more of a cast shadow, I want a sharper edge, like a sharp edge there and a soft edge going this way because the form is turning around. Same thing here, a little sharper, a little softer, soft in here, a little bit harder there, then softer, and then hard. So a variety of hard and soft edges to show that transition from the light and dark fur and from the form turning. So when the form turns, the values have to be gradual. Here it's not gradual, it's real sharp, so I left a sharp edge there. But I want the nose or the muzzle area to read like this. Like form goes this way, then down, then it goes this way, and then wraps around. If I don't get the right value changes, it'll just do that. It'll just flatten out. But I don't want to flatten. I want that form to look like if you laid a ribbon across of it, it would show the form. Same thing with the ear. Also, you can use the brush strokes to show the form is there. Have the brush strokes follow the form of the ear in this case. Here is the finished version. Again, worked on the edges a bit more, pushing and pulling the paint. I did leave some of the burnt sienna showing through. You can see here some in the eye, around the ear a little bit. And I don't plan that, but I don't intentionally try and cover everything. In other words, it's not my goal to make sure everything is covered. So leaving a little bit, and you also can't do it on purpose. It looks stiff if you intentionally try and leave it. But some of it showing up, I think, adds a little bit of warmth to it. But again, it's hard to plan. You just have to let it happen accidentally. Then leaving the background also a little more simple brushstroke showing, because the goat's head is tighter, more detailed. So I want the background to be a lot looser to kind of counterbalance that. Well, I hope that was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to see a video on making color decisions, watch this next video.